Hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 11 of the Kickabout. And this week, we've only got Dan with us this week. Say hi, Dan.
Me. Oh, yeah.
Fran is not around for personal reasons. We're hoping she'll be back next week. There'll be no quiz this week, which is good for me. It gives me a week of not losing, and a bit more time to do some research into football as a general thing. So slightly different show. Be a bit more chat about some of the games just to fill in the time. And there is certainly no shortage of things to actually talk about this week anyway. So also, as you can hear, we're on Skype, as we said last week, for the next, at least 3 weeks potentially, including tonight. It's going to be Skype. So unfortunately, this is the quality you're going to have to get used to for the next few weeks until hopefully Boris and his army allow us to get together again to do it in the same room. So without further ado then, Dan, why don't you give us this week's stat?
So I've gone for a managerial stat this time. Oh. And because we actually won a game, I've gone for the Everton United game. So it's the first time Everton manager Carlo Ancelotti has lost 3 games in a row since November 2006. But which team was he managing at the time?
2014. You forget how long Ancelotti's been around.
Yeah,
and he was probably around quite a while before that as well.
Yeah, he's a bit of a slut when it comes to football teams, isn't he? He's been around a lot.
It's the Stan Collymore of the managerial world. Right, cool, okay. I'll have a guess at that later on, but I'm probably going to get that wrong. So let's move on then to Premier League action. So we start with the thigh rubber of the weekend, which was Man City against Liverpool. A cracking game. Did you watch it? Did you see this one live?
I did, yeah, watched it live.
So the first sort of 10 minutes, were you of the same thinking of me? I thought, Liverpool flew out the gates, and I was sort of like watching this thinking, my God, we're going to be in for another potentially high scoring game here.
It was like a game of tennis, wasn't it? It was just end to end.
Liverpool didn't really, as for all their possession, they didn't really make full advantage of it. They got in behind once or twice. Very early on, I think it was Firmino, I think, was in behind within the first minute and a half. And you did get the feeling like, wow, if Liverpool get a goal here, they could actually run away with this. City looked completely shell-shocked by this fast start.
Yes, especially when they did get that goal. I thought I was head in hands because I kind of wanted City to win just to make the league a bit more interesting.
On that point, see the first goal was the penalty. Kyle Walker, it wasn't great defending, was it?
No, not at all. Did you hear what Roy Keane said about it?
I sort of caught a little bit of it. He was quite damning, wasn't he? Roy Keane is not one to mince his words, as we know, but even by his standards, this was quite harsh, wasn't it?
I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, because they were like, what why did you think that penalty was sort of what happened there? And he was like, well, because you got an idiot in defence.
I did sort of hear something along the lines of that, he keeps making the same mistakes. He's never going to learn. He's awful or something like that. And I was like, it's a bit harsh. Kyle Walker's been one of their better players this season.
Says it as it is.
Yeah, he gambled on the way that Mane, you could see what he was doing. I think he was expecting the 1-2 with, I think it was Robertson on the left. Mane, obviously, I suppose when you're a player of that quality, you kind of get a sixth sense and you sort of know what the defender's going to do without actually having to look at them. So he obviously knew that Kyle Walker had gambled that he was going to do that. He'd committed himself and Mane just spun him in behind, and then Kyle Walker was just such a clumsy challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Well, it's a striker's challenge, isn't it? And he's supposed to be a defender.
There wasn't actually a huge amount of contact, but I don't think there's any complaints about the penalty.
No, it was just clumsy.
Salah duly converted. And from this point, Liverpool were in pretty firm control, you'd say. City gradually began to get more of the ball. Kevin De Bruyne got on the ball a little bit more. But there was some really poor decision-making from City in that first half. I'm not just picking on Sterling here because there were other candidates, but there was once or twice where Sterling was in great positions. And it's almost like he just didn't pick his head up and look. He had Jesus just stood there waiting for a tap-in on one of the occasions I can think of. and you think, well, what the scoreline would be at half time if decision making was a bit better.
Yeah, could have been an absolute goal fest, that game.
Yeah, and then the one moment of quality that came in the game was from Jesus. Was it a moment of quality? Do you think was a great touch or a lucky touch?
I think it was accidental, but I mean, if he did mean it, then I wouldn't want to take it away from him. But
yeah,
I don't think he meant it entirely.
No, I mean, I looked at it probably a dozen times because I just couldn't work out whether it was a moment of sheer genius. You think back to that Dennis Bergkamp goal against Newcastle years and years and years ago, where he sort of did that touch around the defender, spun around the other way, and then put it in the bottom corner.
Yeah.
But if you actually watch Jesus, it looks like as he takes the touch, there's just a sort of split second moment of hesitation where he just doesn't actually know where the ball is.
Yeah.
And then he just reacts quick as he suddenly works out where the ball is, and he just reacts quickest and manages to toe poke it in the bottom corner.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice goal, to be fair to him, and you got to say fair play to him for sort of composing himself if he did lose the ball and managing to poke it in. But if he did mean the entire thing, then even better.
And then we get on to the first of many VAR talking points again this weekend, the Joe Gomez handball. I mean, it's been mentioned in various outlets that by today's interpretation of the law, or today's laws themselves, that it is a penalty. But it's one of those where, especially if you're a Liverpool fan, you probably just sort of slouch back in your chair and go, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" Because we saw the exact same thing in the Leicester Wolves game. We're not talking about that game on this show, but there was a penalty that was almost a carbon copy of this, where I think the distance between the cross coming in and the defender in the Leicester Wolves game was something around, I think it was about 3.5 yards. Something like that. It's a really close distance. In this case, it was a bit longer. It was about 7 or 8 yards, I believe. But the speed at which that ball comes at him, I wouldn't say his arm is in any kind of unnatural position where it is.
No, and I mean, he's running back as well, isn't he? So your arms are going to be in front of your body. You don't really run, well, apart from Sterling, you don't run with your hands behind your back.
No. Little dig there, like it. I mean,
as soon as I saw it, I thought that has to be a penalty. Just the way it sort of hit his hand, and obviously, I think you mentioned it in the notes, so I'll let you say it. But they sort of freeze it, and the way they look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really considered it before it was mentioned. I think it might have been on Match of the Day last night, but I hadn't kind of considered that when the referee goes across to his little screen after he's sort of told in his ear that VAR are recommending that you go and review this, and normally when that happens, that's because VAR think it's a penalty, but they just want the referee to take the ownership of that decision and confirm it. And obviously only once have we seen the referee stick with his original decision, which was I think it was last week actually. But yeah, they slow it down so much, and it's like you don't get an accurate representation of the moment of that situation, because the speed at which that ball is fired in at Joe Gomez, I mean, if you slow it down like that, you almost fool yourself into thinking that he had loads of time to get his arm out of the way when that's just I would prepare yourself, everyone listening, because I'm fucking on one tonight about it. So just wait until we get to the Palace Leeds game. That's all I'm going to say. But I suppose for those of us that are annoyed that sort of thing is a penalty these days, there was a little bit of sort of righteousness in the world with Kevin De Bruyne dragging what was actually, by his standards, a really poor penalty.
I couldn't believe it. I had my hands on my head. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen.
I mean, everybody, a bit like when Salah turns up, he's going to score a penalty. You just assume that Kevin De Bruyne is going to nestle it away.
Yeah, I mean, if the goalkeeper saves it, then obviously you're sort of congratulating the goalkeeper and stuff. But to completely drag it wide, even hitting it over is better than dragging it wide.
Yeah, it almost looked like I didn't quite see the angle that I wanted to when I looked at it, but did he actually hit it with almost like his heel? Is that why he kind of dragged it? Because he actually just caught it with the wrong part of his foot completely?
Yeah, maybe. I didn't really look into it that much, to be honest. I've had my eyes closed, I think, when he missed it. I couldn't believe it.
And then after that point, it was a reasonably even game. I'd say that City probably edged it in the second half, but overall the second half was a little bit of a damp squid compared to the nature of the first half.
Yeah, I think both teams just trying to hold out, weren't they, for something out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, they both had chances. I mean, Liverpool had a couple of good chances that they wasted. So, it could have easily have had more goals in that second half. But after the game, we spoke about Roy Keane already. He actually said after the game that he cannot see now Man City winning the title. And obviously, as I said before, he's not one to mince his word. But is he right here, or do you think he's a bit premature with this?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I've watched quite a few games of Man City so far this season. I think they've been awful. Even the games they've won, they don't look like the title winning Man City over the last sort of 5 years or so.
I mean, they currently lie 10th in the league. They got a game in hand, which if they won, they'd rise to 7th, and they'd only be 5 points off current leaders Leicester City. I mean, 5 points is not the end of the world, bearing in mind we've only played 8 games. So is there not an argument for saying, they're only 5 points off the lead, they haven't hit their stride yet at all. If they can get Jesus firing, or if Aguero can come back and stay injury-free for a good period of games, I mean, 5 points is not a lot, especially with how the Premier League is right now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, mathematically, Burnley could still win the league.
Well, I don't think there'll be too many people putting a fiver on that right now. I mean, there are still issues for City. I mean, we touched on it there with Jesus and Aguero. Jesus, he was lively all afternoon, but as kind of strange as it sounds, to mention this about a team like City with the sort of the riches and the quality that they have, I don't actually see at the moment the way they're playing who's going to get the goals for them. They've only scored 10 goals in the Premier League this year, which is only 13th best in the Premier League. And you look at teams like Chelsea who've scored 20, Spurs are on 19, Villa, Liverpool, Leicester all on 18. They just, they don't look like they're going to be scoring 2, 3, 4 goals a game at the moment.
No, I don't think. I think we've mentioned it before, but I don't think Jesus is going to be the replacement for Aguero, to be honest.
No, I don't either.
He's not like a sort of 25 to 30 goals a season type player. I think that's it. It was hard for them to replace Company, but I think they've managed to do it with Aymeric Laporte.
Yeah, and probably Diaz as well as coming in.
Yeah, and that Diaz looks quite good. Well. But I think it's going to be very, very hard to replace Aguero, who's, I think his time's pretty much over now. He keeps getting recurring injuries.
Yeah, it's a real shame because obviously he's been an incredible player in the Premier League. So it is a shame to sort of see a player like him just be sort of succumb to these constant niggling injuries. So we hope that we'll get one last kind of flourish of sort of 10, 15 games where he's hitting the back of the net every week.
Hopefully he's not playing us.
I just want to deviate from talking about the matches itself and just want to talk about game scheduling because this was a point that came up quite a lot over the weekend. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was obviously extremely passionate about the fact that his team was scheduled to play on the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, having played a Wednesday night in Turkey. Klopp and Guardiola also defended Solskjaer and sort of backed him up. Where do we stand on this? Because the bigger sides do have large squads at their disposal. We are, of course, in very strange times with the fixture scheduling because of the COVID pandemic. Do they have a point, or is this just almost like a deflection tactic?
Yeah, for me, because Wednesday to Saturday, I mean, that's 3 days, isn't it? I feel like you've got big enough squads that 3 days rest isn't a massive issue. I mean, it's nothing to do with the money. I don't understand people that say, you get paid millions of pounds, so you should be able to play.
Irrelevant.
Money doesn't make my legs run any faster whatsoever.
It's certainly fucking for me.
But yeah, I feel like 3 days rest is quite a lot. And I know obviously they're on a plane on the way back and stuff, but Turkey, I mean, it's still Europe. It's not like they've gone to the United States or something.
Yeah, I mean,
so I do. Sorry, quickly. I do sort of understand the argument because at the same time, 3 days isn't a week like some other teams get. But that's part and parcel of being in the Champions League and the Europa League, etc., isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that even the bigger teams will have their preferred 11. They'll have their preferred starting lineup. Even teams like Solskjaer, where you could argue that perhaps he doesn't actually know what his strongest side is. there's a core of players that you could pretty much expect to be in that team every week if they're fit. But it's kind of only really dawned on me off the back of this sort of debate that I don't believe there's been any 2 games in the Premier League that have ever been on at the same time. Well, so while we're in the midst of this pandemic, you have games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and some of them on BT, some of them on Sky Sports. But I don't believe, and I could be wrong in this, so feel free to at me on Twitter and Facebook if I'm wrong on this. I don't believe there's been a situation where 2 games have kicked off at the same time.
No, I think they do them at like sort of 12, then 2, then 4, then 6, or whatever it is. It's obviously not straight after each other, but they sort of spread them out throughout the day, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this has to be for TV rights reasons. For if we're going to be showing every game live on telly, let's make sure we give them their own slot, which I sort of understand. But if we're in a situation where teams are beginning to start to feel the pinch with the players, if they've got a couple of injuries and they're struggling with these midweek travelling and all this kind of stuff, why don't we just play 2 games at the same time on a Sunday? And if they don't want to dilute their audience by having, a 2 o'clock game on a Sunday on Sky and a 2 o'clock game on BT, just put them both on Sky, because at least Sky then get the same viewing figures. They just split across 2 channels. So I just don't get it. And then when you throw into the pot that we've now got 3 more international games coming up, or granted the England-Iceland game is a bit up in the air at the moment with the new sanctions that will come in against Denmark, who first.
I think they're just going to hold that in a neutral country rather than being cancelled.
Yeah, but even so, that makes 8 international friendlies or international games in 2 months. So do we really need, in this current state, do we really need these friendlies as well? Adding in more and more fixtures, or do we need those for the squad rotation and trying new tactics with the Euros coming up next year?
I'd be quite happy about all of the internationals, to be honest, other than the Euros themselves.
I don't know. I don't know whether I'm thinking too much into this or whether there is a genuine concern here. Obviously, historically, whenever there's been issues about game scheduling, it's only ever been the teams, obviously, in Europe that have questioned this. But it does seem strange to me because going back to the Wednesday to Saturday thing with United, obviously the game is Wednesday night. And the game is on basically mid-afternoon or a very early afternoon, on the Saturday. If you take out the travel time, they've got to travel back from Turkey. That really only gives them 2 days rest. So,
yeah, I do find it strange that United was the first game on for the weekend. You would have thought it'd be like a Sunday game or something, really.
Yeah, it's very odd to me. I don't really understand that at all. So yeah, let us know what you guys think as well. Do you think the game scheduling is an issue right now? Obviously there is only so much that the Premier League can do because they have a smaller window to get these games done in. So it would probably be easy, if we didn't have the Euros next year, because they could run on a bit longer and not have to worry about it as much. So yeah, let us know what you think about that. Let's move on. Let's move on to Arsenal against Aston Villa. We're developing a bit of a commentator's curse about us, Dan, because last week we spoke about Arsenal and how they're quietly making progress, and then they turn in one of the worst performances of the season.
You got to love it, though, don't you?
An early VAR goal was ruled out. Yet another VAR decision to talk about. McGinn's sort of thunder strike from just inside the box ruled out because Barkley was offside. I'm assuming for interfering with the goalie. What do you make of that one?
I don't like that one at all, to be honest. I feel like you're just making excuses for the goalkeeper. I think even if Barkley wasn't stood there, there's no chance in hell he's saving that.
Yeah, I mean, you could understand if the ball just passes his hand or something like that.
Yeah, if it rolls through his legs or something like that, then I would say fair enough. But it literally went straight into the top corner. You tell me if you move Barkley onside, then he's saving that, because he's not.
He's absolutely not saving that at all. And Aston Villa, of course, despite the setback that they had in that, they've still yet to concede away. I didn't know this. They have not conceded a goal away from home all season. And it was a really dominant performance, and this sort of further reinforces what we've been saying over the start of this season about their sort of credentials and their longevity, if you like, in this sort of battle to stay at the upper reaches of the top half of the league.
It's weird, isn't it? They literally survived by a hair's width. I'm getting a call during the podcast. They literally survived during a hair's width last season, and now they've beaten Liverpool 7-2 and Arsenal 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, they don't seem to want to change their style of play, which I think, in fairness, why should they right now? Their confidence is through the roof, but they were cutting Arsenal to pieces.
Yeah, they were dominating them.
And then you had I don't know whether you saw it, there was was it for the first actual goal? I can't remember, where Barkley was sort of stood on the ball for it seemed forever.
I was literally going to say the same to you. Grealish did exactly, both of them was just sort of almost like 30 seconds, and they were just stood there like sort of doing the little fake movement, and the defenders they didn't want to get close to him.
Yeah, it was almost like a game of chicken, wasn't it? Who's going to blink first? But I mean, Ollie Watkins among the goals again. That's now 6 goals in the Premier League this season for him. Wonderful first goal. But talk about that assist though from Ross Barkley on the volley. That was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah, really nice. He's looking really good actually at Villa, Ross Barkley.
Yeah, there is something to be said, if you can, as an England international, we are probably not in the same position that we were, say, 10 years ago, where only England players who played for the top 5, top 6 teams that ever got a look in with the international side. I think we're beyond that now. But this further reinforces the point that, if you're an England international player, if you're sort of a squad player, which I think is fair to say Barkley is, he's not a regular starter. If you do make a supposed drop in your career by moving Chelsea to Aston Villa, I don't think that's unfair to call that a step back, despite how well Villa have started the season. If you perform, if you can find some form and get in amongst the goals and stuff, absolutely, that it can actually be a step further in your career.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's more likely to get into the England team playing for Villa at the moment than he would have been sat on the bench for Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the goal of the game was certainly the last one, where Martinez, who had already said, I don't know whether it was before this game or whether it was earlier in the season, he'd actually said that people had told him that stepping away from Arsenal and going to Villa was a step down in his career. And obviously now he's rocked up. They've not conceded a goal away. So yeah, he comes out, catches a corner, claims it really, really well. He rolls it to Grealish, who he's deceptively quick, isn't he? You forget actually how quick across the ground he is.
Yeah, because I don't really see Grealish as a winger. Every time I see him on the wing, I just think, oh, he shouldn't be on the wing. But he's actually a really good winger.
Yeah, and he ran probably half the length of the pitch, rolled it into Watkins, who smashed it in. But what really impressed me as well was off the ball, how hard Villa worked. We all know about the dangers they possess going forward with the firepower that they have, but off the ball as well, they're becoming really, really difficult to break down.
Yeah, I mean, they seem like a completely different team to last season, as if they've had a new manager come in and sort of change how they play.
Yeah. Arsenal, on the other hand, very drab performance. Arteta held his hands up afterwards and sort of taken responsibility for that performance. But should he? I mean, is this a case of that he's doing that just because he just wants the media attention on him and not on his players, when deep down he's going to probably go quite hard on his players for what was a very poor performance?
Yeah, I think all managers do that, don't they? It's the same with like Solskjaer and Maguire and stuff like that. They just always try and take the media attention away from the players themselves.
Yeah, and that's one thing that to be said about Solskjaer is that he basically never blames his players. He never throws his players under the bus. You think back to Mourinho.
It was the complete opposite.
They've only got to make one wrong pass and he's fucking hanging them out to dry. So, but with Arsenal, only 2 of their players started in midweek, so there's definitely no excuses for tiredness there. With the international break, I should imagine Arteta's quite disappointed now because he's going to have to wait 2 weeks to try and bounce back and get back to winning ways. And they're going to have Leeds next as well. And Leeds obviously have, despite their slightly downturn in form recently, Leeds will fancy this.
Yeah. Leeds started really strongly, didn't they? And they've sort of started slowly going downhill, like you say. But I think the international break must be such a pain in the ass for managers, especially when they're on a roll.
Yeah, if you're a team like Villa or Leicester right now, the international break is the last thing you want, isn't it? So, right, let's move on. We're talking about Leeds there. Let's go on to talk about the Leeds game. They were away at Palace. Excuse me. A great performance from Palace. Leeds, we just said about their poor form. Can they probably count themselves unlucky with this scoreline again? And when we had a couple of cracking goals and a bizarre own goal in this game as well.
Yeah, that was the own goal Leeds conceded was a very bizarre own goal.
I mean, we'll start with the VAR decision for Patrick Bamford. I mean, I'm going to have to keep my composure, but where on earth do you start with a decision like this? I mean, for me, this is probably the worst VAR offside decision we've seen since VAR came in.
Yeah, I'd probably go along with that.
I mean,
pointing to where he wanted the ball to go.
Yeah, I mean, to the naked eye, I mean, in football terms, he is a mile onside. There is not a single person outside of the people who make these rules and the people who have to enforce them. There is not a single person in world football that would look at that and say that's offside. And I don't understand why we are just consistently going against the grain here with these rules. So here's the official rules. So let me just take a moment just to kind of give everyone a picture of what the official rule states. So the hand arm is clearly, these are what a penalty must be given for. And we'll get onto the offside bit after. So the hand arm is clearly away from the body and outside the body line. So this also encompasses the Joe Gomez stuff. The player clearly leans into the path of the ball. The ball travels some distance. The ball touches a hand arm that is clearly raised above the shoulder, and that's the key one that we'll get onto in a second. The player falls, and the hand arm is extended laterally or vertically away from the body. Deflection clearly makes no difference to the ball touching a hand arm that is clearly extended away from the body and or above the shoulder. Immediately after touching the ball with the arm, even accidentally, the player scores goals and creates goal-scoring opportunities. So those are the rules for penalties, which... I probably should have brought that up more when we were talking about the Joe Gomez penalty earlier. But the key button there is about this shoulder rule. So if you look at your arm now, if you look at between your elbow and your shoulder and you draw a line halfway up your upper arm between your elbow and your shoulder, the upper part of that line is now considered not handball. Therefore, you can score a goal by using that part of your body. So that is why the line is drawn on Bamford's arm. But his entire body is probably, a yard and a half onside?
Yeah, quite a lot.
So, I mean, I was watching that. I mean, I didn't actually see the game live. I was watching, I looked at some of the updates, or like text updates on skysports.com. Other websites are available. But I mean, even the comments in there were just, you could tell that the guy was writing this just couldn't believe what he was witnessing.
If they're going to do that bit, so like, that certain part of your arm is onside, is you can score with, therefore it should then only be onside if you score with that part of your arm. His leg was onside, so therefore if he scores with that leg, it is onside. That's what I think it should be.
Everything just feels like it's overcomplicated. I feel like we've gone from a place where everybody was calling for VAR to come in to help referees because there was lots of decisions that were contentious and everyone felt like the introduction of video technology would help. What we've now got is a situation where we've now gone completely the other way. We've attempted to write the rules of the game to suit VAR, whereas what we should be doing is using VAR to complement what the original rules were. Go
on, Karen?
No, I was going to say, and for me, that's one of the reasons why VAR is massively failing, is because the rules do not allow for proper use of this technology, because we're now just we're microanalyzing everything with a fine-tooth comb when it just doesn't need to be.
Do you think there are genuinely more mistakes now with VAR, or do you think we're just noticing it a lot more because VAR was supposed to fix these mistakes?
What? So before we had VAR, was there more mistakes being made by referees?
When it was just normal referees, do you think there were more or less mistakes, or are we just noticing it more because VAR was supposed to fix these mistakes?
I feel like I don't know whether you class them as mistakes, because technically speaking, the handball, for example, by today's laws, is a handball. So you can't really, as stupid as it sounds, you can't class that as a mistake. But I think that, if you go back to before VAR, what probably would have happened in situations similar to that is the ball hits the hand, referee doesn't give a penalty, the commentators look at the replay and go, yeah, no, you can't give a penalty for that, and then it's forgotten about.
But that's the Gomez one, I assume you're talking about.
And we've had loads of different examples of that handball rule already this season, when we shared some stats several episodes ago about how many penalties potentially going to get given for handball if we carried on at our current rate. So I think
Patrick Bamford's goal would have counted, wouldn't it, if we didn't have VAR?
Yeah, absolutely would have done. And not a single person, this is the same point, not a single person would have looked at that and considered that a mistake. So back to your question, yes, I do think more mistakes are being made, partly due to the fact that, we've got this ridiculous interpretation of the rules, but also because the rules are written in a certain way, which is meaning that VAR is making these decisions, which, whilst they seem contentious, are technically the right calls based on the current laws.
Mm.
I'm really intrigued to see this. I mean, Bamford was extremely philosophical after the game. I have to praise him, because obviously his team's just lost 4-1. He's had a perfectly good goal. And let's not take anything away from the finish, because the finish itself was absolutely outstanding. And whilst it would have meant one goal closer to me having to give Joe Roberts a tenner, I genuinely do feel for him. I just couldn't believe it. So the fact that he then scored later, I was very happy for him. When
he really took that goal as well.
It was a very nice goal. And did you see afterwards as well? He had that little cheeky little look to the liner, and he was having a bit of banter, saying, "Go on, put your flag up, I dare you." So yeah, I am genuinely intrigued to see where VAR goes from here, because I don't know what the noise is like on the continent, because this sort of use of VAR in terms of the rules and everything is actually in use in other European leagues. And
we've not really heard much from other countries about how it's going, have we?
No, and we were one of the last ones to kind of adopt it. And obviously, we, living in the country and seeing it every week, we're going to hear more about it. But I am genuinely intrigued to see whether we will get some form of U-turn on this, or whether they're just going to take the approach that, sooner or later fans will stop whinging because it will become the norm.
Maybe they don't kick it at people's hands in Germany and Spain.
Maybe they all have worked out a way of being able to balance themselves whilst having their hands behind. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe everyone plays with their hands tied behind their back.
Yeah, that'd be quite interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'd have a lot of concussions, wouldn't we? People falling flat on their face. Right. So anyway, back to the game. That's enough talk about VAR for now. Leeds were till next week. Yeah, we could. Do you know what we were thinking about trying to do some episodes over Christmas, weren't we? And what we could do. Maybe we just do like VAR whinges. Pick a different VAR decision and then spend 20 minutes ranting about it. Maybe we do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the game. Leeds were on top at various periods in the game, and it's sort of just like it looked like they were going to get back into the game. Excuse me. They Palace would go up the other end and score. Palace, we said at the start of the season that they needed to address the fact that they weren't scoring many goals. The stats are showing that they aren't creating a huge amount more chances, but they are being much more clinical.
Yeah, I see Leeds as like a sort of, they come out of the blocks type team. They remind me a bit of like Liverpool. The way they play, they're not afraid to sort of go forward and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I quite enjoy watching them actually.
Yeah, just to finish off on Palace, Iberi Eze, I think his name is. He got his first goal in the Premier League with a wonderful free kick. He looked really lively all day. And between him, Zaha, Batshuayi, Jordan Ayew, Andros Townsend, Christian Benteke, as far as I know, is still there as well. They do have a strike force that is more than capable of scoring plenty of goals, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think it was last week, with Palace, they've got that player in Zaha that can just change, and not just Zaha. Like you said, they've got Batshuayi and a few of the others. They have got a couple of players that can just sort of change games.
Yeah. Let's just talk briefly about the own goal. Talk me through how this one has made it in, Dan, because I don't understand how this has gone in.
No, for me, the goalkeeper, he sort of seemed bemused before the goal had gone in. I feel like he could have saved it, but maybe I'm just being a bit harsh. I don't know. I didn't hear what you just said, mate.
So he was so slow to react, wasn't he? It was almost like he didn't react until it was almost past him.
Yeah, and he just sort of like his face was like, "Oh shit, I can't believe that's gone in." But it was before it had even gone in.
Yeah, maybe he took his eye off it because obviously he would have seen the cross attempting to come in, and maybe he just sort of like switched off momentarily, expecting the cross to come in.
Yeah,
and sort of didn't realise until the last second that it's heading towards the goal. But even then,
it was
he
outside the 18-yard box.
Yeah, I mean he actually dives in time. He just doesn't seem to like dive on the ball. He just dives over it.
Yeah, maybe he had a bet on something.
Oh, now you're talking. Bit of a match fixing. Going back to Leeds, we have given Leeds obviously a lot of praise in this show, as have a lot of people in world football. They've now lost 3 of their last 4, but more worryingly, they've conceded 9 goals in their last 4 games. They have the joint worst defensive record in the league, having conceded 17 goals, along with West Brom. They're not showing any signs of changing their style, which has caught teams out before. You know, if you think back to Norwich last year, we've spoken about this before, with Norwich refusing to change their style, and in the end, it caught them out. Are there concerns here that this may... I'm not suggesting Leeds are going to get relegated here, but are there concerns that Leeds' season is not going to be going as well as, you know, perhaps it should do and could do if they refuse to change their style a little bit?
I think Bielsa's a smart enough manager that if it's really not working, he wouldn't just stick with the same style for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I mean, they're 15th in the league now, but do you feel like they do need to sacrifice some of their kind of attacking flair for some more defensive solidarity?
Yeah, I think they need to just get a few more points on the board and then go back to sort of playing with freedom and the way they want to play. But they need to make sure that they are remaining safe.
Yeah. I mean, they can't rely on their strikers to score, 3-4 goals every game if that's what they're going to concede every game.
Teams will start to sort of figure you out. Which it seems they might. I don't know if it's just the way it's gone and they've been unlucky, or if teams have, maybe Royce sort of figured out how to beat them, or maybe it was just they played really well and Leeds just got unlucky. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how a few more of their games go.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they're currently 15th. They're not in any shape or in any shape or form looking like they're going to be in danger of getting relegated. I think that would be a foolish thing to say right now. But, we've tipped them for finishing at one point in the top half, maybe even pushing for a top 6 place. Now, all of a sudden, they're the next worst team outside of the bottom 5 or 6 that are almost sort of cut off from the rest already. Do Leeds fans have concerns about the way the season is panning out, or do we think that they're just going to be like, we trust in Bielsa, as you say, he's going to change his style and we'll get back to winning ways fairly soon?
Yeah, I don't think they've got too much to worry about. I mean, we were saying with Arsenal last week, like, are they going to start sort of pushing towards the top end of the table, and then they go and lose 3-0 to Villa? So anything can happen.
Okay, right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from the listeners. We're going to talk about how Chelsea have been turning on the style, and we have a contender for one of the worst penalties ever in the Premier League. See you in a minute. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. So, in the absence of Fran, I'm going to do the reading out tonight and let Dan share his thoughts. So, as always, we shared a post on social media, basically giving you, the listeners, the opportunity to give your feedback about the weekend's action and tell us what you thought of the various games, what made you laugh, what made you cry, what surprised you, and et cetera, et cetera. So, the first comment was from Joe Ingram. VAR is an absolute joke. If Bamford was offside, then the game is gone, although I'm sure Chris is happy it wasn't allowed. Part of me wasn't, or was. Villa looking like contenders for top 6, although a lot could happen yet with the congested fixtures. A few injuries could really hurt them. Chelsea looking stronger and stronger each week, will be title challengers. And obviously the funniest moment was the Lookman penalty, which we'll talk about a little bit later. He's asked us who we think will be the first managerial casualty, and is Wilder really loved enough by Sheffield United to keep his job for much longer? What do you make of that?
Where do you want me to start?
I'll take your pick, mate. Go on, go wild.
I feel like we've talked about VAR, so I probably don't need to talk about that too much. I agree. I agree with him. It is an absolute joke.
Yeah, let's talk about Villa being top contender or top 6 contenders.
It'd be nice. It'd be cool if they were up there. I just feel like they're the sort of team that, like 8 games in, everyone gets really excited, and then towards the end of the season, they'll be like 14th or something like that. I don't think they'll finish that far down. No, I don't think they'll. I was literally just off the top of my head, but I don't think they will be in the top. I mean, I hope they prove me wrong, but I don't think they will be in the top 6 come the end of the season. It's so easy to get excited at this stage of the season, but you've got to remember we are only like 7 or 8 games in.
Yeah, I mean, he's mentioned there a few injuries could really hurt them. The trouble is, you can't really discount a team's ability and where they're going to finish based on the prospect of a potential injury.
I don't know, because with Liverpool and Van Dijk and City and their centre backs.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what I mean by that is that Van Dijk's injury has now happened, so you react to that and you have to readjust your expectations about the team. But I don't think you can. I think it'd be unfair to judge Villa based on if they get injuries. I think you have to make that adjustment in expectation if that was to happen.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I do agree that injuries to certain players, I mean, you look at West Ham, like since Antonio's not been in the team and Haller's come in, there's definitely been a change.
Yes.
Like you don't look, I mean, obviously it's still winning, but for me, we'll get into it later, but there's a massive difference when like the 1 or 2 players from certain teams. So, I mean, even United, if Bruno Fernandes went in that team, we'd probably be sat next to Sheffield United. Chelsea. I'll get on to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was about to say this. I was about to say the same thing. Let's talk about Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea looking really good. Quite enjoyable to watch as well. All their new players. That was Ziyech. Is it Ziyech?
I think it's Ziyech.
Ziyech. Yeah, he looks like a really good player. I think it's like 3 man of the matches in 4 games.
Yeah, he does look one hell of a player. I mean, we're going to talk about Chelsea in more detail shortly, and we'll also save our chat about the Lookman penalty as well for later in the show. Who do you think will be the first managerial casualty?
For me, it will be either Scott Parker or Slaven Bilic.
Yeah, I feel like Bilic is number 1 contender right now. I think Parker, I mean, Joe's alluded to here that Wilder is extremely loved and extremely respected at Sheffield United. I've read and heard that Parker is very much in the same boat at Fulham, whereas Bilic, I think, doesn't have that relationship. He did a cracking job to get them promoted, but I think that the way things are going with West Brom right now, I think he will be lucky to not be the first manager relegated. Relegated to the job queue. We can say that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, just on Joe's comments, Nick piped up and said, as a Southampton fan, he said Villa contenders for top 6, but Southampton aren't. Joe responded with, 1 match without Danny Ings and a good result, but I'm not sure they can cope without him, depending on when he returns throughout the season. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see them up there. I just worry about the squad depth with Southampton. Do you have a point about Southampton?
Yeah, I mean, again, like fair play to them for being up there in that position and being top of the table for, was it a day?
Yeah.
But again, it's another team where you're like, we're 8 games in. I mean, if they're still up there in that position come the end of the season, I will hold my hands up. But they're not going to be, are they?
I think with Southampton, actually, I'll bring in the fact that Pete Thurgood posted a picture of Southampton's official club store with a sort of piss take shirt which said "Stop the Count" with a picture of the league table and the time when they were at the top of the league, which of course was the first time in their history that they've ever topped the Premier League. And I went back to him, and I hope he doesn't. I hope he didn't take offence to what I said back to him, because I was genuinely trying to play middle of the road here. But I sort of said, I get the rivalry, and football is all about rivalries. It's all about those massive games that like the West Ham Millwalls, the Pompey Southamptons, the West Ham, Chelsea Spurs, Arsenal Spurs. All those Man City Everton, Man City United, Everton Liverpool. All those games are the ones that kind of make football. And especially in England, they make the English football what it is. But I think when you take into account that a year ago, Southampton got pumped 9-0 at home by Leicester. A year later, they're now top of the Premier League. We all know it's highly unlikely that Southampton are going to be anywhere near the top of the table come the end of the season, barring a sort of Leicester miracle. But it's a historic moment for the club, and I think it's further proof that they're doing a huge amount correct right now. If West Ham did this, you're damn right I'm going to be fucking tweeting about it and smiling about it. It's not a case of asking people to put aside their rivalries forever, but I think there has to be a certain amount of appreciation when something like this happens, just to sort of say, yeah, I still hate you, but fair play, you're doing all right at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you're a supporter of one of these clubs like Villa or Southampton, I think you just got to enjoy it in the moment, really.
Yeah, because a lot of this is probably down to COVID and the craziness that's going on right now. So this may not happen again for a very, very long time. So, absolutely enjoy it. And then finally, Dave McGregor. Ollie's escaped, but for how long? Why did he moan about the fixture pile-up? He should have praised his players for performing after a European away game where they were absolutely terrible. And then he just put VAR with lots of laughing emojis. You've touched on this before, Dan, about Ollie and the fact that he will often, just when it's looking like the writing's on the wall and his head's bound for the chop, a performance is pulled out of the hat and it sort of saves him for a bit.
I would have put my house on us beating Everton, not because it was Everton specifically. No matter who we would have been playing, as soon as he's sort of that one game away from being sacked, he just seems to pull out the bag and get a win. And then he's safe for another 6 or 7 games.
Do the United board just need to threaten him with a sack before every game?
Yeah, that
probably like win the league and win everything.
Yeah. But Pochettino must be getting so pissed off.
Yeah, he's got his bags. He's got his bags packed.
Get a job again.
Yeah, he's got his bags packed, ready for Manchester every week, and then he has. Oh, I guess I'll unpack. It's a bit like it's like I'm a celebrity and things like that. Every week when somebody's going to get the chop, they all have to pack their bags just in case it's them. So Pochettino's doing that every week. Right, love, I'm going to Manchester. I've got the job. 10 minutes later, he texts his missus. Yeah, false alarm. I'm coming home for dinner.
They just need to pan to Ollie on the bench, and he's just doing like the wind up middle finger to the camera.
Oh dear. And as far as the fixture pile-up goes, obviously he did make a massive point about that. He wasn't even asked a particular point. He sort of said that the players were sent out there to fail. Almost sort of insinuating that there was a bit of a conspiracy against United and wanting United to fail because the media loves writing about Manchester United. Do you think that he should have afforded more praise to his players after that performance? Because in fairness, they were very good, United.
Yeah, they did play really well. I think the pressure's getting to him a bit, and I think obviously everyone was staring at that game thinking if he loses this, he's probably going to get the sack.
Yeah,
I think he's not the kind of guy that if that was Mourinho, he would have come out, like, fuck you all, blah, blah, blah. But Solskjaer's not the kind of guy that does that. So I think that was his way of saying, like, F you, I'm not getting the sack type thing. I think that's what that was.
Yeah, I think I probably agree. Right, okay. So that's the end of the listener section. Do remember that you can get in touch with the show every week. You don't need to wait for us either to post your thoughts about the weekend or about what's going on in the world of football. If you want to get in touch, we are at Kickabout Pod on Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter, and you can get us at show@thekickabout.co.uk as well. Right, let's get back to the Premier League action. We're going to talk about Chelsea against Sheffield United first. Chelsea they're purring right now, aren't they?
Unfortunately, yeah, they are playing really well.
What did you say unfortunately for? Is it because of Joe Morton?
Because just Joe.
I mean, before we talk about all the good that Chelsea are doing right now, let's just talk briefly about Sheffield United and the trouble that they find themselves in. we mentioned earlier that 5 teams are seemingly already beginning to be cut adrift at the bottom of the table. At the moment, I don't think this is unfair to say that for 2 of the clubs that survive, the reason they're going to survive is because they're going to be slightly less shit than the other 3.
Yeah, it's interesting. The 2 teams, sort of Burnley and Sheffield, are the 2 teams probably best known for their defending ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And without wanting to sound too harsh, player for player, if you looked on quality alone, Sheffield United, you would argue, don't have enough quality in that team to realistically, not be in a relegation fight every year. And last year, the reason they weren't in a fight is because they worked extremely hard off the ball. They closed down spaces. They prevented the goals from going in. They prevented those chances from being created. And they're just not doing that right now. I mean, there was a lot of great blocks in this game. So you could, a casual observer might say, well, they're still putting those blocks in. They're still putting their bodies on the line. But actually, if you, to go the tape back about 10 or 15 seconds, you look at all the things they weren't doing which led up to that. Those are the things, that they're doing wrong right now.
Yeah. Well, all over the pitch, to be honest. Even, obviously, they brought in, I can't even remember his name, from Liverpool, striker,
Brewster.
Young guy. Yeah. And that was a bit of a gamble. They could have obviously paid quite a lot of money for him, could have gone for maybe an experienced striker, but they've gone for someone young and hungry, and it hasn't quite paid off just yet.
Could they have, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but instead of going for Brewster, which I think cost them something in the region of about 20 million from memory, Josh King at Bournemouth was available for about 15 or 16. Could they have potentially gone in for him?
Yeah, I think they probably should have done, to be honest. Like I say, an experienced striker, he gets goals. He's proven to get goals. I think he's 28 now. And plus, from a championship team, if they'd have gone early enough, they probably could have gotten a bit cheaper than towards the end of the window.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at Callum Wilson for Newcastle. He's banging them in.
Yeah, I feel like Josh King fits their style as well because he does work quite hard off the ball. So he's of United mould, if you like.
Yeah. Whereas Brewster was a massive gamble, and it'd be nice if it pays off. It's still a long way to go, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see with him.
Yeah, I don't believe he has a goal for Sheffield United yet, and goals are in very, very short supply for Sheffield United right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, Chelsea would not have been a game that they would have looked at and said, let's look at this, let's target, a point, 3 points, whatever it may be. But then you look at last year, Sheffield United were taking points off of a lot of big teams in games that they weren't expected to. And at this point, I mentioned before quite cheekily that Fulham are in danger of breaking that worst ever Premier League points tally record. But Sheffield United are very much in danger of that as well at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, they sort of mentioned on Match of the Day that I think there's only ever been 2 teams that have avoided relegation from this position that they're in right now.
Yeah, it is looking bleak for Sheffield United, that's for sure. So, right, let's move on to Chelsea. And let's start off with talking about Hakim Ziyech. What a player he looks. He is. I don't know what it is. There's just something about left-footed players that's just so much more cultured and just so much more easy on the eye than right-footed players. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I think it's because there's not that many of them, isn't it?
Maybe.
Lefters.
So I want to talk about our good friend Joe Morton. I want to just slow it down for a second. So on Facebook, I posted on Saturday that Chelsea were looking good, and they're doing everything right now. And I think Joe Morton might have been on the happy pills. Maybe he's had some hero juice over the weekend. He very confidently stated that Thiago Silva was the best centre-back in the league. Chilwell and Reece James were the best fullbacks in the Premier League. Kante was the best CDM, and Ziyech will be the player of the season and is better than Kevin De Bruyne, and that we're going to win the league. So, very positive. I'll give him kudos for that. But let's break this down. Let's analyse this, shall we? So I'm going to ask you, Dan, Thiago Silva, best centre-back in the league or not?
No, personally, no. I feel like we can go through them one by one. I just think in the moment, right now in the last 3 games, yes, but overall, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the same argument that I have for Ziyech and maybe for Reece James as well. Is that yes, right now they are playing out of their skin, but I don't think you can class them as the best in the league unless Joe means best in the league right now. In which case, fair enough, hands up. Yeah, he's probably got a point. But if we're just talking about the best player, period, then I'm not sure.
I agree. Kante is the best CDM.
Yeah, I'd probably go along with that. I don't think there's any better. It's weird, isn't it, that he is still probably the best CDM in the league, and yet he spent the vast majority of his time at Chelsea over the last 2 seasons not playing in that position.
Yeah, and I'd probably agree that Chilwell is the best left back, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's probably. Kieran Tierney, I rate a lot. I probably wouldn't put him in front of Ben Chilwell, but I do think Kieran Tierney is very good, despite his. I don't know what happened to him. It was like someone hit him with a taser at the weekend when he fell over the ball. Reece James, I don't think is the best right back in the league.
No, I think you've got to give that to Trent, really, haven't you?
Yeah, I do believe so. Despite Kyle Walker's bad performance of the weekend, I also think he's probably still got to be in the conversation because he is still a very good player. And then Ziyech better than Kevin De Bruyne. This was the big one.
That, like you just said, if Joe means literally right now, maybe this season, I would agree. If he means like as an overall thing, you can't say someone is better than someone else after 4 games.
Yeah.
De Bruyne has been doing it for, I don't even know how long he's been at City now, like 5 years.
Yeah. If Ziyech carries on at this pace, he may well be on course for it. But yeah, I think
if he does it for another 3 years, then I will completely agree with him.
Yeah, and I think Kevin De Bruyne has, from what I've seen anyway, more to his all-round game than Ziyech does. I feel like De Bruyne defensively. I mean, maybe it's a slightly unfair comparison because Ziyech is he's a winger, he's a free-floating number 10 player, but then Kevin De Bruyne is a very much all-round player. I feel like De Bruyne is better defensively than Ziyech is, but that might just be the role that Ziyech has been given with Chelsea. He might just be told that, you are potentially our best player on the ball. Don't worry about the defending. We'll sort that out. We got Kante. He can do all the running for you. And just get on the ball and just dictate. And in fairness, on a slightly more serious note, Ziyech's range of passing is absolutely insane.
Yeah. His assists and there was all-round passing was amazing, wasn't it? Just seemed to find the feet no matter what distance it was.
Yeah. Do we have a contender for goal of the season with Ben Chilwell's no-look knee finish?
Could you call it that?
When I watched it, I mean, the first point is I think Ramsdale has got to come and get there. If you look at where Chilwell is, why the keeper's not coming to get there. I appreciate that the ball is put into an area where it's in that sort of do I come, do I not come area for a goalkeeper. But when you look at where Chilwell has actually maintained, where he's had contact with the ball, he's basically inside the 6-yard box. So I think that's bad. But yeah, it was an incredible finish from Chilwell because he actually looks at Ramsdale because I think he's worried about getting clattered.
Yeah, that's what you're saying about Ramsdale. That's a team low on confidence, though, isn't it? That's the sort of things that teams that aren't confident they do.
Yeah, it's looking around. You deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah, no one wants to make a mistake. No one's taking responsibility.
I mean, if we're assuming that Liverpool are still the favourites to win the league, despite how the season has started. Do we have to suggest now, with the way the City are playing, do we have to suggest now that Chelsea are probably Liverpool's biggest threat?
Have Chelsea played City or Liverpool yet?
They've played... Who have they played? They played United and drew 0-0. I think they played Liverpool and lost 2-0. That was quite early on in the season. And in fact, I think I've got this written down here somewhere in my notes. Did I write it down here? 20th of September against Liverpool. That was actually the last time that they've lost in any competition, if you exclude the Spurs game, which was on penalties. But I mean, I guess you could include that in your own thinking if you want. But 20th of September against Liverpool was the last time that they lost inside 90 minutes in any competition.
Answering your question, I do think they're contenders. I don't think they will win the league, but I do think they'll definitely be up there and they'll be fighting alongside City and Liverpool. I think maybe next season, like a few more additions, then they could really have a go and potentially actually win it. But I think it's a little bit early this season for them to be actually winning it.
You said there are a few more additions. What else do you think Chelsea need then? If they're going to be a proper title contender,
probably another centre back because I mean Thiago is 36.
Yeah.
But it's obviously the experience of having him at the moment is good. Probably another centre midfielder, and that is probably it. To be honest, with the amount of signings they made last year, I don't think they'd need too much more in that team. I just think it's the overall squad depth rather than the starting 11.
Yeah, it looks very much like that they're going to be on course for another run in the Champions League. If the season goes back to any kind of normality next year, then potentially they're looking at fighting for trophies on 4 fronts. So they will need plenty of depth. So it might be a case that their starting 11 right now is actually good enough to win the league, but across the season you can't rely on just those 11 players. You've got to have very, very good strength and depth, which to a large degree they already have. But yeah, a couple more might just put them in that position where they've got a squad like City's or Liverpool's. But everything right now is clicking. I mean, they're scoring great goals. Their defending is much better. If I said to you that I believe that their best signing of the season so far has been Mendy, would you disagree?
I wouldn't disagree.
I just feel like the confidence that it brings a team when you've got a goalie behind you that you can rely on. I mean, that a goal at the weekend, which was very close range, nothing Mendy could do about it. It was the first goal he's conceded in something like 350 minutes of football or something stupid. So, and creating chances, as we know, was never their issue, particularly, although Ziyech has sort of taken that to another level anyway. But defensively now, they're just so much tougher to beat. And, strikers win games, defenses win championships and all that.
Yeah, I don't think they would be where they are. I don't think they'd be flying right now if they still had Kepa in goal.
No, exactly.
He was just absolutely snowballing.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about match fixing earlier. I think Kepa's making it so blatantly obvious that I think that needs to be.
I think Ziyech would be definitely sort of joint contender as signing of the season for them. I mean, 3 man of the matches in 4 games is pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, I'm not taking anything away from the impact that Ziyech has had as well. But all I mean is that they had a glaring problem.
Different impacts. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a glaring problem with their defence, which there's no two ways about it. If Kepa was in goal all season, they're not getting anywhere near the Premier League title.
Yeah.
And so Mendy has fixed that problem with the help of Thiago in front of him as well. And all of a sudden now, they can play with more freedom because they know that they've not got to score 3 or 4 goals every game because they know Kepa's going to give at least 1 away every game.
Mm-hmm.
Play with a bit more freedom, safe in the knowledge that, they can try a bit more because if they don't score those sorts of goals, they can still maybe score 1. They might get a 1-0. So we have criticised them a lot over the course of the season, and in particular we've criticised Lampard as well. Do we think now is time to take a step back and say, right, you've got your team now show us what you can do?
Yeah, hopefully they can keep going, and it would be nice to see like a 3-horse race or something rather than just like your Liverpool and City fighting out again. It'd be nice to see more teams getting involved and actually having a go of it.
It'll be interesting. I mean, could very well be that the 3-horse race is not including City at the moment. But
yeah, well, then it'd just be a 2-horse race again. But yeah,
you don't think somebody like Leicester might be able to keep up with them and provide maybe not a full-on challenge, but a little challenge?
To be honest, the only other team that are sort of looking like they'd maybe be up there are Spurs at the moment.
Yeah, and
they keep scraping those like annoying 1-0 wins in the 90th minute.
Very Mourinho-esque wins, you say, aren't they?
Yeah.
And to be fair, the Chelsea's run of fixtures looks pretty favourable over the next month or two. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing where Chelsea are in 3 or 4 games' time. But the big one is on the 29th of November, Chelsea against Spurs. So might we see...
Where's that, Bridge or...
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'm going to do a quick Google, so apologies if you hear my my keyboard as I type. It is at the Bridge. It's at Chelsea. So that, I mean, not that makes a difference these days with no fans and stuff, but
no,
it's that's probably Chelsea's biggest test of the season so far. It did discount the Liverpool game because they were all at sea. They were defensively poor. Now they've got their kind of, everything's
settled in.
Now, yeah, they're all settled. This will be the test. If they can rattle over Spurs and put in a really convincing performance, I think then we'll have to really take them seriously as title contenders.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, we finished then with West Ham against Fulham. Now, I wasn't actually planning on talking about this game because it wasn't the best game of the weekend by any means. As a West Ham fan, I'm pleased we got the 3 points. Historically, that is a fixture that, after having played some bigger teams where West Ham historically will always raise their game and potentially pick up some surprise results, it's a very West Ham thing to do, to then go and slip up against a team like Fulham. However, the game came into sort of flew into life in the last sort of 5-10 minutes of the game. Ben Rama got a bit more game time. He set up the goal for Souček. I want to talk to you quickly about this offside rule here, because we sort of touched on it earlier with Barkley and the disallowed goal for Aston Villa. Scott Parker, after the game, was quite passionate in his argument that when the cross comes in towards Haller is clearly offside. The defender obviously knows he's there. He obviously won't know whether he's offside or not. So he's not just going to leave the ball, which is what Parker said as well. So therefore he has to go for it. Now, the header itself was poor, and we obviously then go on and score from it. Does he have a point there? Should we be classing Haller as interfering there because he is having an impact on what that defender's doing?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's no different to the Scott McGinn one.
John McGinn.
Sorry, yeah, John McGinn. It's because he's a Scot. That's why I had Scott in my head. John McGinn. Yeah, it's no different to the John McGinn one, where Barkley's obviously slightly obstructing his view, but he's literally not involved in it whatsoever. And I feel like if that one's given, then you've then got to give the Fulham one.
I mean, is there a way in which we can find... I mean, we've attempted to do it with VAR, with the lines, and we've attempted to do it with the crazy rules they bring in, which obviously haven't worked. Is there a way that we can make offside a lot more linear, a lot more yes or no, without all this crazy interpretations? Can we just say, if a player is within 10 yards of the ball, he is deemed to be interfering? I mean, they can use technology to work out whether they're close enough for that, or do they just apply some freaking common sense to it? In this case, Haller is obviously offside. The player is going to know he's there. He has to deal with that ball coming in. Do we class that as offside, or do we say, do you know what? It was a shit header. It's your own fault for conceding a goal.
Yeah, but then we'd have nothing to talk about if it was all simple.
Yeah, the trouble is, I guess, if you can change one rule to change it to something else, but there's always going to be those fine margins. If I said if you're within 10 yards, what's going to happen is that they get the old measuring stick out. People would be whinging it's not in the same place, and it'd be like 9.9 yards and he's classed as offside or something. Yeah.
I mean, I think the decisions go for and against you. I think they sort of balance themselves out eventually.
Yeah, I've never been so sure whether I agree with that or not. I know what you mean. I know it's you will always get decisions across the season. One will go for you, and then you'll get one that will go against you. Whatever. But I always feel like that's kind of papering over the cracks a little bit. There's an underlying problem here, and I don't think managers or anybody in football should kind of be looking at it as an acceptance to say, well, it doesn't matter if you fuck up there because later in the season there's going to be another screw up and it's going to be in our favour. I feel like they should be.
I mean, I think the whole thing's a crock of shite, to be honest. But unfortunately, we've got it, and we just have to sort of put up with it. And it's if it was like the first ever mistake, it would be like a massive thing, but it happens every single week. And now it just feels normal to me. Do you see these decisions? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised that was given.
Yeah.
Like with the Joe Gomez handball. Like in my head, that's not a handball. But as soon as it happened, I was like, yeah, that's a handball.
Yeah. I mean, this particular example here with Haller, it's like you do see this quite a lot. And I have to say that this is probably the first time that I've heard a manager actually call them out on it. So maybe this is a bit of, much of nothing, really. That he's just sort of looking for excuses, and he's probably more annoyed about what happened afterwards. So let's get into that. The big moment happened when Ben Rama, who set up the goal, then gave away a penalty after VAR intervened. And for a change, VAR, in fairness, I think did get this one right. It is a penalty. I don't have any real issue with that. But I just want to make a very quick segue before we talk about the penalty. This game was the box office 8:00 game on Saturday night. I refused point blank, like you did, Dan, with the who were Man United playing? Was it Newcastle?
What? When? Oh, the other week.
When it was on box office, yeah. So yeah. I refused to pay the 15 quid to watch it, and it appears that most people have been doing that because the decision appears to have been made that box office stuff is going to be scrapped altogether as of now. So there is a very, very real chance. I don't think it's been 100% confirmed yet, but all the noise is that thanks to the second lockdown and general ill feeling amongst the football fans is that they are going to scrap it altogether. So that's a real win for fans. But as a result of that, I didn't watch the game. And I made the decision, do you know what? I'm going to ignore my phone for the entire evening and I'm going to watch it on Match of the Day and not know the score. And do you know what? It was actually quite fun. I quite enjoyed it. And the anticipation was something that I've not experienced for a long, long time.
Is that because you won, though?
Well, it was a roller coaster of emotions. I'll give you that. So obviously, I didn't, not knowing the game and what happened, watching the highlights, watching West Ham rattle the bar twice, create these good chances but not score. And I said to Annabelle, I was like, I know what's going to happen here. They're gonna score. They're gonna nick a 1-0, and we're gonna be like sort of head in hands, wondering how on earth we've not won this game. So we got the goal like last minute. I was like, right, Kushti, let's crack on. And I was waiting for the West Ham 1, Fulham 0 full time thing to come up at Match of the Day, and it didn't. And then they showed Fulham on the attack, and I was like, oh, for fuck, I know what's going to happen here. So corner comes in, penalty is given eventually after it was sort of like ding-donging around. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe we're going to draw this game 1-0. Up steps Ademola Lookman. He tries. he tries. I mean, let's put this into perspective here. Fulham are going to need every point they can get this season. They really are. I don't think it's unfair to say that they are going to need to steal a point here and there. They absolutely did not deserve anything from this game, from what I could see. West Ham were the better team, even though it wasn't a great game. West Ham deserved the 3 points. But if Fulham had snuck a point here, that's massive for them. That is massive come the end of the season. So I'm expecting Lookman to just step up and smash it in the corner, but no. He tries a Panenka penalty, and if you haven't seen this, I urge you to go and look on YouTube and go and find the highlights to this game, because it is one of the worst penalties I've, not just in Premier League history, that I've ever seen.
It's a luxury that Fulham don't really have, to be doing Panekas.
No. I mean, I'm not exaggerating here when I say that Fabianski in the West Ham goal was able to dive, get himself back up onto one leg, compose himself, and then catch the ball with one hand. I'm not exaggerating when I say that's how it went. So maybe there's a little bit of Scott Parker being so pissed off with that he's decided to lash out and talk about the offside Haller thing.
Well, he did say in the interview as well that Lookman was an idiot, didn't he?
Oh, did he? I must have missed that. Did he call him out on it?
He didn't call him an idiot, but he said, you just can't do that. If you're going to take a penalty, then you've just got... he said, if you're going to do that sort of penalty, you've got to score. Otherwise, you just can't do that sort of penalty.
I mean, that's... Yeah, I know what he's saying. But I just think that those sorts of penalties are reserved for when you're either 2, 3, 4-0 up, you're a team not fighting against relegation, or your name is Zidane or Pirlo.
Well, you've just got to be a team playing with confidence, and Fulham aren't a team playing with confidence, so I don't know why. Because even when he was sort of just about to take it, you could see how nervous he was.
Yeah.
And
Do
I
you know
feel
what?
like with that, just smash it. Just smash it. Like the worst thing you can do is smash it straight down the middle and the keeper saves it. But to try and do that, I mean, if it had gone in, we'd all be talking about it in a completely different way. But like Scott Parker said, and like everybody would say, if you do that sort of penalty, it's got to go in.
Yeah, or at least go over. Because I'm not even sure that ball's reaching the goal, let alone going over the line.
Yeah, I mean, if Fabianski had let that in, we'd be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember a few weeks ago when Fulham played against Sheffield United and Lookman scored a really good goal? He had a really good game. And then after the game, when he was interviewed, he rather arrogantly said that he can score all types of goals. That's the sort of player I am. I can score all types of goals. Obviously, Panenka penalties aren't one of them. But I just feel like, as you say, that there's confidence and then there's arrogance. And, there are certain players I can think of in the back of my mind. I think of like Adel Tarabt for QPR, those sorts of players that just, no matter what the situation, they have to do something that's going to wow people. He wants his name written up in the stars because he's the one that in the 98th minute of a game, in a match that they needed points from, he does a Panenka penalty and saves the day. That's the headline he saw in his head, isn't it?
Yeah. Is he on loan or have they signed him?
I think he's on loan.
See, that's the thing. He can just go back to his club when it's all said and done.
Yeah,
and, I mean, it's only a point, but that point would have gone a long way for Fulham.
Yeah, you'd like to think that the situation of him being on loan at a club doesn't come into his thinking in that situation, but it may well come into his thinking in a week or two's time.
What would you be thinking if you were, I'm not saying that you've done a Panenka, but if you were on loan at a club and they were looking like they were going to get relegated, obviously you'd be fighting to try and keep them up. But surely in the back of your mind, you're like, well, if they get relegated, I don't go with them.
Yeah, I guess I'd be a fool to suggest that. So I wouldn't at least be thinking about that in some way. But yeah, I don't know. They need to put somebody else on penalties. I was kind of surprised that Mitrovic didn't take it. I know he missed one against Sheffield United.
I think he's missed his last two.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
I suspect he'll be on the next one.
Yeah.
So, right, just before we finish up with your stat question, I just wanted to talk very, very quickly about Man United because I was conscious that we've spent a lot of time bitching and whinging about United on this show. So I didn't want it to be, a thing that, what they one game, they win and play really well. We don't actually talk about them at all. So just very quickly, Dan, as a United fan, positive from the game or were just Everton shite?
Yeah, no, I thought when Everton scored the first goal, I just sort of thought, oh, bloody hell, here we go again.
It's quite a soft goal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. But as soon as they scored, it just sort of seemed to be the United show, to be honest. We were all over them and scored some really nice goals. Bruno's goals, both of his goals were really nice. So I am really happy with the win, but part of me is just almost feels like it's sort of delaying the inevitable. But apart from that, yeah, I was really happy finally winning a league game.
Did you was part of you thinking that regardless of the result, because of how United played in midweek in Europe, that enough negative stuff and enough negative performances had happened now that Solskjaer is potentially for the chop anyway? There's been so many rumors about Pochettino. And you just know that another bad performance is not too far away. So do you think Solskjaer is still there at Christmas?
I think he will be. He just keeps sort of digging himself out of a trench. But I've said it so many times. I just look at the bigger picture and I look at, is Solskjaer going to be winning trophies at United? And I don't think he is. And so if that's the case, what's the point in having him as a manager? Just, for the ride. Like I don't want to be on just like a bus ride. I mean,
we have said. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about that Solskjaer hasn't had the support of the board over the summer. They didn't sign, obviously, Jadon Sancho. They made a bit of a mockery of themselves, really, and in how they dealt with that. I don't necessarily agree that they didn't support Solskjaer. I just think that perhaps in the current climate, they didn't want to pay the 95 million. But I feel like what they should have done is just decided we're not going to get him. Right, let's go and analyse and get some proper targets in rather than doing what they did do, which was sort of leaving it to the last minute and panic buying, for want of a better expression.
Yeah, and I really don't understand the whole Donny van der Beek thing. Like, I think it's very clear now that Solskjaer didn't want Van der Beek whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
yeah.
against Istanbul, Van der Beek was our best player. And I think, like, in the sort of fan things, he got man of the match. And yet he got taken off after an hour. And everyone sort of thought, oh, it's probably because he's going to play him against Everton. And he didn't even play a single minute.
It is very odd with Van der Beek because you've got a class player sat on your bench and he's watching with the greatest respect. Fred and McTominay are not bad players, but if I was manager, I'd have Van der Beek ahead of either of those two every day of the week.
Yeah, and I don't know if he thinks that Van der Beek is a number 10 because I don't think he is. Like, he's a box-to-box player. Yeah. So you can quite easily fit Pogba, Van der Beek and Bruno Fernandes in that team at the same time if you wanted to. But the way Pogba's playing at the moment, I would go Van der Beek, someone like Matic as like your sort of CDM sweeping player, and then Bruno sat in front of Van der Beek and Van der Beek just being your box-to-box.
Yeah, I do like McTominay. I have to say, I think he gets a little bit of unfair criticism sometimes. But if it were me, what my three in midfield be, I'd probably have Van der Beek. Honestly, I'd have McTominay in there over Pogba right now because I just think that Pogba is. I just don't think.
I'd like to see him leave at the end of the season, to be honest.
I think he's had more than enough chances to prove his worth to that team, and I don't think consistently over any of those periods he's done enough to justify.
I'm just so bored of him now.
And then I'd have Bruno Fernandes, and you could potentially have Van der Beek playing a bit in front of McTominay and being that box-to-box player. Let Fernandes sort of roam a little bit more, and as you say, have McTominay in there for the legs and just sort of to do the boring side of the game or the dirty side of the game and break up the play and give it to the players who can make things happen. So
yeah.
As far as Everton go, 3 losses on the bounce now for them. Obviously, they had James Rodriguez back in the side, but just little signs of inconsistency creeping into their game. And, they weren't at the races at all at the weekend.
No, they weren't. And it was like that stat that I sent you earlier that they've not actually won a league game without Richarlison in their side since since they signed him in 2018.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's 2 years of not winning a game with Richarlison not in the team.
Yeah, I also incorrectly said that he's injured. I think he did get injured, but I think he's fit, but he's just serving his 3-match ban for his red card against Liverpool, so he should be back in the next game. Maybe Richarlison is a lot more valuable, well, clearly he is, to the Everton team than we give him credit for.
Yeah, I just don't buy into the whole like one player making that much of a difference, though. Especially to a team like Everton, I can understand a team like, no offense to like Crystal Palace, I can understand the difference like Zaha makes to Crystal Palace, but a team like Everton who do have a lot of very good players, like James Rodriguez is like I was going to say world class. He's not world class, but a very good player. At one point, he was world class. Allen is a very good player. I could go on, to be honest, but I was nearly said Pickford. That's why I stopped myself.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, Pickford obviously had another questionable moment in the game where he karate kicked Harry Maguire in the chest. I'm not, again, sure how that one wasn't picked up as a penalty. Some suggestion that it was a little push from Maguire previous to that, but for me, if my goalkeeper is being put off and dropping a ball like that, a slight push from Maguire, I'm very frustrated with my goalkeeper. I think he's lucky to still be in that team. Obviously, Ancelotti stuck to his word. He said that Pickford would be back in the team for the United game. But it'd be interesting to see whether Pickford's in goal for Everton next time out. So, right, let's finish off the show then with your stat, Dan.
I will read it again. So, it's the first time Everton manager Carlo Ancelotti has lost 3 games in a row since November 2006. but which team was he managing, Chris?
2006, 14 years ago. That is a very, very long time ago. I'm trying to think where he's been. I'm gonna say I don't think it was 14 years ago, but I can't think of who else he was at. I'm gonna say Chelsea.
No, try a different country.
Okay, so the trouble is he's been bloody everywhere, as you say. He's the Stan Collymore of the managerial world. So I am going to go with, I think, maybe an Italian club. Is it Napoli? Yeah. Maybe.
No, you're right. It is Italy, but it's not Napoli.
Go on, put me out my misery. Who is it?
It's AC Milan.
Do you know what? I did not know he was a manager there.
Yeah, 2006.
Really? Oh, okay. Right. Cool. All right. Well, it's a shame we don't have a quiz this week. Hopefully, Fran will be back next week, and I'm sure she will make up for not being here this week with an amazing quiz next week to put Dan further in the lead and me nearer a forfeit. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We hope that you've enjoyed the show. We hope that you've stuck with us with this sort of Skype sound quality. Hopefully my end sounds all right because I'm recording on the same equipment, but obviously Dan is on Skype at his place. So yeah, let us know what you thought of the show. Quick shout out, if you are listening on iTunes, we would really appreciate if you could give us a 5-star review. And also, if you've got any people that listen to podcasts and are interested in football, we would really appreciate if you could help spread the word, share our Facebook pages and other social media stuff as well. So that would be much appreciated. So yeah, all that's left to say is thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
See you later.